we got an echo.
Will that work?
Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to the Board of County Commissioners work session, Tuesday, February 13th, 2023, 1:02 p.m. My name is Ty Mentor, Chair of the Board. My Vice Chair, Commissioner Wayne Fournier to my left, Commissioner Gary Edwards, Commissioner Mejia is excused, and Commissioner Klaus hopefully will be joining us in a few moments. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. We have 2 hours for some sessions with various elected officials. First up is the auditor, and then district court, and then the treasurer. So I guess these are kind of in equal thirds. Is that the idea? Between the time, the 2 hours of time and the 3 departments that we're going to hear from? Mm-hmm. Okay, so like 40 minutes-ish. Okay, very good. Auditor Mary Hall is here, as well as Interim County Manager Robin Campbell and Assistant County Manager Rob Gelder. So I'll just turn things to the auditor.
Okay. All right. Well, good afternoon, and I really appreciate that you're having these meetings. I know we originally wanted to do once a month just to tell about, explain what's going on in our office, but I think quarterly is going to kind of work just fine. So appreciate this opportunity. A couple things I want to go over today. I want to talk about the legislation we're currently working on, an overview of what's happening in elections right now. Got some fun and exciting things to report on recording and passports. Talk a little bit about financial services, budget to actual state audit, and a little bit about grants management. So it's been a short, crazy busy session for all of us in elections, and we really do still have a lot alive in the hopper. And also, of course, there are always people who think they know how to conduct elections, so there are some bills that we really don't want to pass either. But the first one I want to talk about is 1241. This is a bill we've been working on since 2000, and it's basically about harassment of election officials. Now, a couple of years ago, we were fortunate enough to be included in the cyber harassment bill that passed the legislature. So if somebody sends a viable threat via email, that already is a felony. But if somebody walks up to me and says, threatens me, that's still a misdemeanor. So what this bill is simply bring those two penalties into alignment. So, regardless of how the harassment or threats happen, it's the same penalty. The next one, House Bill 1962, is really what we're calling a cleanup bill. In 2020, we implemented the statewide voter registration database. And prior to that, every county had their own system. So we manage our own voters accordingly. Well, once we went to a state system, we still had limitations in place that, for example, you can't change a voter's address across county lines. So it's all one system. This is going to really simplify address changes and things like that, so we can transfer people across county lines, because the voter really doesn't know they're moving across county lines, but currently they have to actually re-register. So that will make it easier for everybody involved. We're also working on a voter registration challenge bill. This was actually a bill that I worked on in conjunction with the new auditor in Kittitas County. And we've been getting a lot of voter challenges, which I think voter challenges, there's definitely a place for them. If you remember, we've had a couple that were pretty high profile in Thurston County. But what's happening now is people are bringing a lot of voter challenges simply to try to clean up our voter rolls. And currently in voter challenge statute, the auditor can't, or prosecutor or chair of the board, can't delegate authority for that administrative hearing. So what this allows is we can delegate authority for those, so we don't have to drag out these voter challenges over time, because let's face it, our schedules to get us all together is quite a challenge. So that's one change, and what else does it do? And then it also doesn't allow people to challenge inactive voters. And inactive voters never receive a ballot anyway, so they essentially almost need to re-register to become on the active rolls again. So those challenges really just take up time. Those are no longer allowed if this bill passes. So optimistic, Senator Braun introduced an amendment which passed, so we've got unanimous bipartisan support on this bill, so we're really excited about it. 1932, about even year elections, and the auditors oppose this bill. What this bill will do is allow cities and towns to run their elections in even years. And there are challenges to that, to the administrative process that people don't really think about. It could create two ballot cards, because picture in a primary, we've got 29 gubernatorial candidates, 10 people running for senator, and then you've got these crowded city council races. That could cause us to have two ballots for a primary election. And the challenge with that is it's impossible to reconcile. And I go back to my experience when I worked in Pierce County in 2012, when we conducted ranked choice voting elections. We had two ballot cards. And the voter doesn't always return the ballot that drives turnout. So we tried really hard to manually record those that returned the second ballot, but we weren't successful. We ended up being like 146 ballots off for reconciliation, which, if you think about it, in a close race, which city council races are sometimes, mistakes happen. But if that could affect the outcome of the election, we could potentially have to rerun that election, which is very costly. And I don't think the city would have to pick up those expenses. We haven't totally researched that. So anyway, this is a bill we really don't want to pass.
This is the even year one?
This is the even year election. So if
Who's
WASAC,
promoting it?
Mia Gregerson sponsored the bill, Representative Mia Gregerson.
Is it still
She's from
alive?
Seattle. It is very much alive. It passed along party lines, like 54 to 40 something in the House, but it's got a lot of momentum, and you don't really need both sides of the aisle to pass a bill right now in Washington State. So we are turning out as many auditors as we can Friday morning, which is why I can't be at the canvassing board meeting, to testify in opposition of this bill. If this
I
is
would
something
think
that
that you guys
WASAC,
would be able to kill it.
pardon me?
I would think you guys would be able to kill it. You're the practitioners. You're the ones
Uh,
that know the best,
Thank you for that. Sometimes that doesn't always work with the
right?
legislature.
Yeah.
But we could really use WASAC's help if
The
they.
issue is getting it all on one card?
So cities could conduct their elections in even years. So imagine that City of Olympia decided to go in even years, but Lacey, Tumwater, Tenino decided to stay on odd years. I think, number one, that would be so confusing for voters. Plus, it would create a really long ballot in the primary election, which could cause a lot of issues. And when we're trying to build trust in elections, having that kind of discrepancy is not going to help. So,
You were saying that, like, if everybody switched to the same year and there was a big gap in between elections, it would be hard for you to maintain like your professional part-time or seasonal staff for elections and things like that.
but it wouldn't do away with special elections in
Okay.
February and April. I think we'd be okay, but that is a real concern for some of the smaller counties.
Yeah.
Like Ponderay and, Columbia, where they may have one election staff person. So that is a concern.
But the reason for is it would help people reduce election costs because it'd be one big ballot. Is that the?
It could potentially for cities, because they would share it with a larger pool of people.
Just makes
Is
a
that
big
the-
mess.
For
Is that-
us, it wouldn't matter because we get revenue when anybody runs, so I'm sorry.
Well, just superficially as a citizen, the first thing I think of as a benefit is just to have a break. It's just a constant churn of elections. You never get a chance. Before we certify, then we have new candidates declaring for the next crop of elections. And I could see that as a benefit. Is that the argument for it, or are there other arguments that are in favor that I'm not seeing?
I think their argument is they think there would be better turnout,
Okay.
which there is better turnout in even years. However, there's a tremendous amount of voter fatigue and ballot fall off in down ballot races. So I think we need to really gather some statistics to see if that is true. And my understanding, I was told this by somebody who's been in the field for many decades, is that cities and towns requested to go in even years because there was so much fall off on the ballot when they were crowded in with all of the
You know,
other
odd years.
stations. They went, yes, thank you, odd years, because there was so much competition in even years. I mean, not only on the ballot, but support,
money.
yeah.
And volunteers.
So that's a bill we're working to hopefully have not pass. So Senate Bill 5843 is a good bill. It's sponsored by the Secretary of State's office. It's basically about insider threats, and it does several really good things, but I think the main intent of the bill is to be proactive, so we couldn't have rogue canvassing board meetings or members not certify an election. So that happened in several places across the country in 2020 where they refused to certify the election. So if it's a valid election and they refuse to certify the election, the Secretary of State can step in and certify that election, and those people would also be removed from office. So the penalties are quite high on this. Any questions on that one?
Where's it at? How's it going?
It's passed out of the Senate and it's in the House. So all of these bills have passed one chamber, so, and have pretty good momentum. So today is Election Day. I hope everybody has voted, everybody in
I
Thurston
forgot my
County.
sticker again.
Did you vote?
I have my ballot. It's upstairs.
Oh, jeez.
You know, Wayne, I did this
I know
even
you
when
did.
I was on the ballot.
I
Okay, so
It's
know.
election day. We have to celebrate election day.
Okay, we'll bring you an I voted sticker. I'll have one sent over
Thank
for
you.
Don't give it to her yet.
Yeah, you gotta witness me putting it in the box first.
Yes.
So it's an interesting election because right now we have overlapping elections because we've got the presidential primary going on also.
Is that going on right now too?
Yeah, we've already sent ballots to military voters, so
Oh, but it's not being counted today.
they're not, well, we're having to, when they come
out.
in, because they do come in from military voters right away,
Oh.
we just isolate those ballots, but, you know, it's really tricky. You've got to have really tight controls over your mail, and sorting mail becomes really important. But if they go through our sorter, it will kick it out anyway if one accidentally gets in the mix. And there are other challenges with the presidential primary election because you have to declare your party on the outside of the envelope, so we have to sort those anyway, and count them by party, because the ballot inside has to match what was checked on the envelope, or the ballot doesn't count. So logistically, these are really challenging elections that we get to do every 4 years. And voters don't like them, and they're not used to them because we always did caucuses or had blanket primaries for so many years. But it's what we do, and we'll make it work, and we'll do it well.
If you haven't seen the sorter, you gotta go see it.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I like the sorter.
Me too. I know you like it. I've heard you talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome.
Changed our world, having to manually, you know, we used to scan the barcodes with a gun like you'd see at the grocery store. So that was very, very time consuming and took a lot of people. The other thing I want to talk about is our elections office. And when the class and comp study was done last year, this was the one area, or one of few areas, that was where wages in Thurston County were below the average across the state. So this was supposed to be in the first group of adjustments. And I really want to stress how important this is. And we also, I think, really need a career ladder in elections like we have in our licensing and recording department. I mean, elections has become a lot more technical than it was 10, 15 years ago. We have a lot of equipment, like ballot sorters. A lot is automated where it wasn't in the past. I mean, we still have these manual processes, but I really want there to be a way for people to be able to cross-train on things, but I can't bring in a specialist and train them on a tech piece of equipment, right? So like the career ladder in licensing and recording, once they start progressing, they can work in more areas, and we've only got a crew of 9, so that would be really beneficial to us. Plus, I think it would really help with retention, and election workers across the state are resigning in record numbers. Clallam County Auditor just lost her entire staff as a result of the November
What? Say it
election.
again?
Clallam County Elections lost her entire staff as a result of
The entire
some
staff?
observers, yeah.
What happened?
The abuse they took in the general election. I don't really want to go into details since this is live streamed on YouTube, but I'd be happy to talk to you about it afterwards. Taking precautions here in Thurston County that it doesn't happen here, but there was also another county that lost all but one person following the 2022 election also.
Jeez.
I can tell you it was in the 3rd Congressional District. So, you know, this, sure.
So when you're talking about the career ladder, you were talking about opportunities for staff to climb ladder and cross-training. What would that look like? Has that been a conversation between you and the board before?
Yes.
Would it be complicated to implement a process like that? Because with only 9 staff, I mean, it sounds like a conversation we should be having unless there's history there that I'm unaware of. Because that seems like it would be relatively simple, possibly, unless you had to restructure like your whole office to make it happen or something.
No, it's pretty simple. And I know Maria is a fan of the career ladder also for, you know, certain, doesn't work for everybody, but certain types of offices, it works really well. So to explain how our recording and licensing department is set up. So anybody hired in is either a recording clerk or a licensing clerk. So those are the duties they do. But when you combine both of those areas of responsibility, we've got a pretty lean staff. So what we do, and this was negotiated with the unions, is we have the ability to cross-train these staff. And once they become proficient, so we have, let's say, 2 recording clerks, but we really are weak on the licensing side of things. You know, we might want to start cross-training and then open it up to where, you know, these people could become a recording licensing clerk too, for example. So then they can do both things within the union contract and guidelines. And ours goes 1, 2, 3, and then above that it goes to, you know, supervisor, manager. But it helps a lot. I only have, for example, 1, 3 in recording. And there's a high bar to get there. But, you know, your real talent rises to the challenge and puts their nose to the grindstone and learns the, you know, different jobs. So it really does benefit the office, and I think it helps with retention a lot. We've got really great retention in our licensing and recording department.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. What else? Mottman. Love for you to come out to the Voter Services
there on
Center.
Friday.
It's actually starting to take shape. Pardon me?
I'll be there Friday.
Oh, perfect, great, okay. Thank you very much for shifting that funding to that purpose. It's really going to serve us well in November. I don't know how we could have done it in the old bank building, but it's starting to take shape. It's been a really smooth process all the way from working with the city of Tumwater to facilities to the contractor. It's just really going smoothly. So I'm pretty excited about that. And I'm hoping, and they're hopeful too, that they might actually complete it ahead of schedule. So, so that's very, very exciting. And we're moving ahead with the isolated mail opening areas. You know, we received fentanyl in November. They don't expect that to go away in the general election. They expect that to happen a few more times. We have no idea to what level, but we are just putting out basically a hole through to our D shop. It's another bay next door, where we will be able to open mail in an environment that, if we were to discover something like that, we don't have to shut down our entire operation, which is what King County, Pierce County, and Spokane County had to do in the general election when they received those envelopes with fentanyl in them. So looking forward to that. It's not going to be pretty, but it'll be functional, and that's really all we care about. The other thing we want to talk about, and I know that, Robin, you've provided some information to Diana. We're waiting for pictures, but one of the things that was pointed out rather quickly by Department of Homeland Security is how vulnerable our generator and propane tank are, because they're out in the open. And it really hit us in the face when there were all these people around the generator, and we had no idea who they were, right? And it's elections generator, and it's like, who are these people? And it really got us thinking that we really need to enclose that, and that's a strong recommendation by Department of Homeland Security, so defense both of those things, so people can't get inside of them, you know, unless they need to get inside of them. So we're working on that with facilities and Robin. So I just wanted to make you aware that is going on, and you know, there's always something. And I want to talk about ballot processing center in general. And you know, prior to 2020, we were in a leased space, so that was very different than being in a county-owned building, which we are now finding out. You know, we managed our own janitorial service, our own shredding service, and we still have our own alarm system. And I think it's really important that we keep those separate from the county for a number of reasons. One, these are billable costs, so we direct bill these to the jurisdictions as an election cost, so they really don't belong in the rates. Secondly, if our alarm goes off, I really need that company to call me, not facilities. We need to be the first point of contact, and we need to be able to communicate with them, as well as janitorial services, because we need them cleaning during the day, not at night. They have to be escorted, so we need that relationship with those companies. And also shredding. We really need to be in control of shredding and our schedule. What happened to us in 2020, we didn't realize, okay, we're on now the county contract. It's really important when we do our shredding, because our retention for federal elections is 22 months. The reason it's 22 months is then you have another federal election and you fill up with that election, and other reasons, which I'll go into. So the shredding company didn't show up in September. They didn't show up until October. We were well into the presidential election, and we were accused of shredding presidential election materials. We got a lot of public records requests for schedules and paperwork and what was shredded following the election.
Just the timing of the shredder truck parked outside your facility during the president election.
So we've changed our procedures. Now we put very clear labels on the boxes, you know, sheet labels that go on there that say what election this material is from. We also send a letter and an email to both political parties, letting them know when we are going to do our shredding and inviting them out to watch our shredding. All because our shredding company didn't show up on time in the 2020 election.
Yeah.
You in charge of this stuff?
Because now it's a county-owned building. And that's
Why
what,
can't you be in charge of these
we
individuals?
can't.
Central Services does it.
We can. But I just want to stress how important that is, because we're working with that. We're working on that right now, but it's still in flux. But we really need to, I want to have that in place soon, because we've got the presidential primary coming up, and
So that's already solved, you're just informing us.
well, I hope it's solved.
Is that Robin, is that something that's achievable?
Yeah. Okay, good. So, yeah, it's really important that we control these.
The
And
shredder truck optics is, I mean, it's
Shredder.
laughable, but it's like, man,
The
it's,
shredder contract, though, I will say it was not only elections. We couldn't get the shredder people out for nothing.
wow.
And they were non-responsive. When we finally got through to them, they said they had staffing issues. We finally, broke the contract
Wow.
and went with a different contractor. It was a mess in
Yeah,
2020.
it was,
But
it
you're
was
gonna
really
do your
stressful
own,
for
you're
staff.
gonna do your own thing.
Yeah.
It's been resolved.
Good.
Yeah.
Gosh,
Mary would prefer her
the
own.
look.
It just makes sense because there are just so many weird things about elections. I mean, look at this picture. This happened last Friday. Somebody tried to steal
You're
Mason
kidding
County's
me.
ballot box.
Last Friday?
Mhm.
At the school or what?
I don't know,
They
this,
need
I
some more
think,
concrete.
trying to think where this was. Do you remember where this was, Emmett or Diana?
This was North Mason Library.
Yeah, it was at a library. So I've got some things to do that will help us if somebody tries or does steal one of our boxes. We'll talk more about that at the security briefing we have.
Air
but,
tags.
You know, it's just crazy the things that we
Campaign
have to
signs.
consider and think about. And because these little incidents are popping up, the Auditors Association, we're actually gonna put a spreadsheet up on our, you know, up on SharePoint that only we have access to just log the crazy things that are happening, so we can think about, what would I do if that happened in my county?
Smart.
It's just a crazy, crazy year, and has been really for quite a while now. But many of you know that I am a big COOP planner. We do a lot of continuity of operation planning, and if you're welcome to come out to them. We have another one we'll have two more before the general election. We just did one in February. But it really trains your brain how to pivot and react. I think that's why we were so successful pivoting during the pandemic. I mean, we didn't miss a beat in really any department. Just stood up laptops and ordered what we didn't have, and we were up and running. So I want to talk about the recent power outage. I was so proud of my recording and licensing and passport staff. They continued operations. They continued issuing passports. Of course, we couldn't get into our licensing system, but they just directed them to the nearest subagent. And we have a policy that if recording is down for 4 hours, they start manually recording. They didn't have to trigger that, but they have this handbook they pull out and they know exactly what to do. So I just wanted to put that plug in for, for other departments. And I think COOP is really important, and I know we haven't really been focusing on it that much. When I started, there was this active group that we participated in a lot, but anyway, just want to put a plug in for that. But I was just so proud of my staff. I was out at the ballot processing center that day, but they knew exactly what to do. We also had a record-breaking month in passport transactions last month. We're pretty excited about that. We do expect that trend to continue as we get closer and closer to Real ID. We're also putting flyers in licensing renewals that go out. So we're starting right now or very, very soon. So people will know we issue passports. We're kind of going to do a comparative. I mean, they're going to either need an enhanced driver's license or a passport. So this is what you get with an enhanced driver's license. This is what you get with a passport. So we're hoping that they'll opt for a passport because, I mean, it allows you to do fun things like travel the world.
How
So,
long does it take to get a passport?
8 weeks currently.
What's the point of the Real ID? I mean, why don't they why did they create a whole new system when they could just say everyone needs to get a passport? The system's already there.
Yeah, I think it has to do with citizenship, right? Emmett, do you know the reason behind
If
Real
you're
ID?
not a citizen, you can't get a passport.
Well, you can get a passport, but it's just a security measure. We're one of the few states that don't have that. So I really don't know a whole lot. I just know that I'd rather have them get a passport because it gives them more.
That's only, I mean, but you're saying you need it if you're
You
gonna
need
fly.
it to get on an airplane, yes, I'm sorry, yeah. You need it to get on an airplane. So currently, you can just get on with a normal driver's license, but you'll need to have a real ID or a passport.
When's that coming up again?
It's May of 2025, correct?
You get both too, right?
Pardon
You'll
me?
eventually have to have both.
Well, you can keep a regular driver's license and have a passport. So that's what I'm doing. I have no plans to get an enhanced driver's license because I have a passport.
Okay.
Pardon me?
I have both. I
Yeah.
covered my bases.
And this is just a fun little tidbit. We record a lot of documents, and we finally came to audit file number 5 million a while back, and that was in December. But it's really cute what they did. You know, we have a lot of people that recorded documents are near and dear to their heart, title companies. That's a important part of what they do. So if you want to be entertained a little bit, you can go look up auditor file number 5 million. What they did, I don't know if you know Dan Jenga from the assessor's office. He used to work in a title company, and they put together this little time capsule with all of these stories and, you know, about various things, but it was also a tribute to this person who was with, I think, Thurston County Title, and she mentored a lot of people. She was kind of the institution in the title world, and it's really cute if you really want to see something out there. They did a nice job, and it's a great tribute. And it's fun that, you know, that number was, you know, taken by somebody with intent. So it'll be there forever because recorded documents are forever. The other thing I wanted to talk about in recording is finally, we're starting to see an increase in recorded documents. As you know, the real estate market pretty much tanked as interest rates rose last year. So people were no longer refinancing their house or even buying or selling houses. So that really, really dried up revenue from recording. But it looks like it's going to pick up again. I know the feds didn't raise rates at the last meeting. There were some rumors that they may lower rates in the future. And if that happens, I think we're going to start seeing a lot of refinancing, and the housing market is going to take off again because there are a lot of people that are holding back from either selling or buying
When
homes.
are you thinking this is gonna happen?
I don't know, but we
I
just had a
think the interest rate went
January.
up today.
Pardon me?
I think it went up today.
Yeah?
It's headed back towards 7.
Oh, the rates did? Okay, did they? Well, anyway, I like to be cautiously optimistic that the market's gonna turn around, so. Anyway, there are statistics that show that it. I wanna talk a little about our budget to actual report. This is a report that we send to the chair of the board every month. It means a lot more further down the year, but what it does is give you that snapshot in time of actual expenditures to budgeted expenditures, actual revenue to budgeted revenue. And it also shows you what point in the year we're at. So, for example, as of the 31st of January, we're through 8% of the year. So it gives you kind of a snapshot of where the various office and departments are as far as both revenue and expenditures for the year. Now, you really need to become familiar with this report because, for example, our revenue in elections comes in at the end of the year, or, you know, it's accrued at the end of the year. And also, we spend most of our money at the end of the year, but it does give you a snapshot. With some departments, it, you know, they could tell us about red flags or something like that. So I just want you to know that we make that available to you every month, and it'll mean more once we close out the year, because, for example, we don't have all of the grant revenue in yet. They're still booking that to 2023. So I want to talk a little about grants management. It is a countywide resource. I know we're continually applying for grants, and our grants manager is a huge help to us, I know. She has a SharePoint site out there that people can go to that shows what grants are available. She's also a tremendous resource for putting grant applications together. I know she just worked with Public Health, who was successful in getting a pretty substantial grant, and we were awarded a grant from DOJ, so we're happy about that. And I'm thrilled, I want to congratulate Devi that the EEOP is making great progress, and there's I think a final draft copy out there. Is it final draft?
Have a, yep,
Okay,
right
perfect.
there. It's on the board's agenda
Right,
for when they're ready to adopt it.
right. So as soon as that is adopted, we can accept this award. So it's there, we just can't get the money, claim the money until we submit our EEOP with Department of Justice. So Devi did a fantastic job pulling that together. And I know there are a lot of people that helped along the way, but anyway, I'm giving her all the credit. Talk a little bit about the state auditor. As you know, we get audited every year. We did really, really great for 6 years in a row. We had clean audits. Prior to that, we had some, and financial services really started talking to all the departments, making themselves available to be a resource if they had questions about how they handle certain types of transactions and things like that. It seems like during COVID, things got a little more siloed, so we're really hoping to open up that communication again. I know they reach out to all the departments and try to be a resource, and it sounds like the budget office and financial services are starting to communicate. We need to make sure that, things done in the budget office, this round peg goes into a round hole, because budget's different than accounting and reporting. So I'm pleased to hear that in the meeting yesterday that there's a lot more collaboration there.
When we have the financials, computer systems,
It's
will
gonna
that
help
help
a
you
lot.
guys see what
Right.
each other are
Because
doing?
right now,
No? You say
budget
yes, you say
isn't-
no.
well, for us it will, because we can't see the budget module at all unless we have permissions to get in and see the budget module. There are things that would be helpful for us to look at that we don't have now. And Diana or Darren could probably explain that better than I.
That really does surprise me. So if you don't have access to something in Questica that you need, just let us know.
Yeah, I don't know that access is the right word. Diana, how would you describe it?
That they are separate systems, and hopefully when we have one local system with the different modules, we'll be sharing data.
So the interesting thing, and the reason that I say no, it's not going to change, is Sierra Cedar has made it quite clear to us that even though it's under the Oracle brand, they are two totally separate systems. They run on separate platforms, they are quite different, and in fact, we have to pay for an interface to be built between the budget system and the accounting system. So it's not going to be, in terms of what we really wanted was one system. We are not getting that.
Well, it'll be better than what we have, and I mean, it's no different, having that bridge is no different than what we have with Fleet and, the sheriff's time
Yep. There you
keeping
go.
software and all of that. But, right now, they're totally separate systems that you can't pass data, or it's very difficult to pass data.
Actually, they do pass data daily, every day, every night. They're
Well,
on a nightly update.
everything I'm hearing from the people that really can speak to this is that it's going to be much better. So I'll bring my finance
We hope.
folks next
It's gonna be much better.
time. So anyway, so we're hopeful. We've got our exit conference in March, and then we just found out, I think yesterday or the day before, that they're also going to come in and do a performance audit. And it's going to be a cybersecurity audit. And it's basically a follow-up to the cybersecurity audit they did in 2000. They came in, did a complete cybersecurity audit, offered some recommendations. So I think it's just follow-up to see, how we're doing. Did we follow those recommendations and things like that? So Darren just gave me this number this morning. Of course, cash balance doesn't change. It's 27.8 million. but his estimated fund balance is, he thinks is gonna be anywhere from 32 to 34. I don't know how close that is to yours, but they're usually pretty close.
Yeah, we were quite close this year.
That's it for me. Any questions?
Good overview, Mary, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for putting the slides together. It helps me focus when I can see it in front of me too, so thanks.
Thanks for the opportunity.
I have one question. Mary,
Yes.
kids aren't learning cursive anymore. So what's the deal on signatures? I'm told they lose track of their signatures or they don't match. What's the deal on that?
Well, it's getting harder to match signatures for our youth, the new voters, that's definitely true. They do teach, they don't even call it cursive, they call it fonts or something, do you know? I don't know, you have young kids. But we are
know how to do
working, we are working or proposing a bill through the legislature, we hope is going to pass, that will allow us to do some pilot projects to see what's out there for verifying the identity of a voter using something other than a signature. So it would be a pilot program that would only be used in
Index finger.
the special elections. But we do recognize that problem because the largest group who has mismatched signatures are the 25 to 34-year-olds. You know, when they're brand new, they're practice and they're trying to sign and then they just throw it out the window and can't read their writing. So, yeah, we're very well aware of that problem.
I thought of a question, actually. What is your opinion on how ranked choice voting, if that were to pass, how would that impact your office?
So first I want to just preface that I view my role as I conduct elections, however the legislature tells me to conduct them. So I don't have an opinion one way or the other in ranked choice voting. However, I do have experience conducting 2 ranked choice voting elections in Pierce County, general elections. Our software that we currently use can accommodate ranked choice voting on the same ballot. So it would certainly be a lot easier than it was 13 years ago.
It can or it can't?
It can.
It can.
So I can have a grid and plurality voting on the same ballot. There is a bill in the legislature right now. I think they really made an effort to clean it up to make it work for us, but there's a bill out there right now that we worked with the sponsor that had all of these different types of ranked choice voting in the same bill. So we could potentially have been conducting multiple types in a county, which would be incredibly confusing. So I think if they can get it down to simply ranked choice voting and not the single transferable vote or things like that, I think if there was an option for jurisdictions, I definitely think we would have at least a city that would choose that, and we would be fine conducting it that way. The jurisdiction would be required to pay the upfront costs, so.
Okay, so you wouldn't need like additional staffing or any other additional expenses if that, I mean, I know if it were to pass, it just gives the counties the option. So we could choose to implement that or not, but I mean, it doesn't sound like it would have any undue burden on your office in terms of staffing or.
Well, it would, especially in the beginning, because it would be new for everybody.
Any change, like any change.
Like any change. I don't know, at this point in time, I think it would just be a different dimension of an election.
You mentioned something happened in Pierce County.
So Pierce County had ranked choice voting elections they had a freeholder election who rewrote some of the things in the charter that implemented ranked choice voting for county offices. And the first election that was conducted in was 2012, which is when I was running elections in Pierce County. So we did conduct a ranked choice voting election only for auditor, treasurer, assessor, treasurer. I think those were the only offices because they combine the assessor, treasurer, and the clerk is appointed. And I don't know if you remember back then, but the person who won the assessor treasurer race was very controversial. He was a perpetual candidate who was just an attractive guy who wrote a fantastic voter pamphlet statement, and it was a crowded field. So the votes were really diluted between these other great candidates, and
I don't understand the problem that it's trying to solve. To me, it's like a solution that's looking for a problem, and I'm like, I don't know.
the one benefit I see is it would make campaigns a lot cleaner and more polite, because you want that second person's vote, right? Because they transfer, so you rank candidate one, candidate two, candidate three, or 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
And if, let's say, your second choice loses, then, or your first choice loses, then your second vote would
It's
advance.
just wonky, like
So,
even explaining it is wonky.
It's not that hard.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure there are groups that would love to come in and do a presentation for you.
Well, we've had
I-
Yeah.
I've listened to them
Oh, you
all.
have, okay. With Fair Vote, Lisa? Yeah. So, you know, there are a lot of states that are implementing it. I haven't really dove into statistics of, you know, if the claims are correct or not, and probably won't. I'll just conduct elections however the legislature tells me to conduct them.
Seems like a fad.
They say that, I mean, that's what I've heard too, is that it's supposed to create an incentive not to attack your opponent. Because of the wanting to get second place on that
Right.
opponent's,
You want them to come
Voters.
out and endorse you, for example.
like, yeah, if they get, you know, and stuff like that. So I don't know if that's a positive, if it's true.
Yeah.
It probably wouldn't prevent your minion from being a bad person or something, though, I suppose.
I think it did create there's a lot more decorum in the executive race. That was the other one that was on ranked choice voting, in Pierce County in 2012. That was a definite. There wasn't a lot of mudslinging and things like that.
Okay, thank you, Mary.
You bet. Thank you.
If we move on to district court.
Oh, I will. Sorry.
Last week. We ready? Thank you.
Just jump right into
Jump
it.
right in. Yep, it's all you.
Don't mind me.
Oh, thanks for having me. I echo what Auditor Hall said. I think it's a fabulous opportunity for us to be able to come in and continue conversations, get a little bit more into detail of what it is district court does. I know that we continue to have these conversations throughout the year, and the more that we can have, the better, and sharing kind of the day-to-day, maybe getting a little bit more into capacity, caseload, don't really get too into the weeds. But just so that we can get into a little bit of what district court is seeing day to day, week to week, month to month. One of the first things I wanted to go over is COVID backlog. I know that court backlog is one of those things that we've been talking about for the last 4 years. We are fortunate early on, county, courts, offices, departments, all getting together and defining what backlog means for each of those offices. And district court, with the way that things are filed, defines that a little bit differently. With district court, 90% of all of our misdemeanor cases are direct filed. So that means it comes from law enforcement, cited directly into the court. We're filing those with the court before they're even touching a prosecutor's desk or an attorney's desk. So for those reasons, we kind of identify that backlog a little bit differently, looking at those pre-resolution or those pre-trial cases. How many do we have pending? And using that as kind of our measure so that we can identify where our needs and support need to be to addressing that COVID backlog specifically for district court. Early on, when we started looking at that, we identified that prior years, prior to COVID, we'd have between 1,600 and 1,800 misdemeanor cases in that pretrial status. We see COVID hit, that number starts increasing. We see it start hitting 2,600, 2,800. That's our COVID backlog, those 1,000 cases. The reason I bring that up is to discuss where COVID, the district court COVID backlog is. There is no district court COVID backlog. Everything that we have right now is business as usual, if you will. The pending cases for trial are at about 1,600, maybe a little bit lower than that. We're back to running full speed ahead. I know that there are still, with other offices and departments, extenuating factors from COVID and what that backlog looks like. But we're very fortunate in the situation with all of our justice partners coming on board to addressing that backlog and getting that moving forward. I think there's been a really great effort to make that happen. That ends up bringing me into where we're at now, the regular daily business and what is coming into district court. Right now, caseloads are increasing, case filings are increasing. Obviously, coming out of COVID, there is a little bit of a dip, but they are quickly, very quickly going up to what they were before COVID. This year, I want to say that we were 7,000. This year, we'll probably be about 30,000. Following year, about 33,000 filings with district court over that single year. In order to address the number of filings, what we'll be seeing for this next year is we're going to be scheduling about 900 proceedings every single week. So I ended up doing my math beforehand. That's about 47,000 proceedings that we will be scheduling over this coming year. And that is over business days. So 249 business days, 47,000 proceedings that we'll be holding. So we are high flow, high caseload court. In addition to those workloads that we're dealing with, I know that we discussed a little bit before too, is just the number of interactions, we're calling them, with the general public that's coming into the court. There's no way to track every individual one, but we are confident that it is well over 100,000 interactions that we're having with the general public, whether it's email, phone calls, in person at the front counter, our new live chat service. That kind of aids into what that workload looks like. And we're just talking our mandated services, general fund that's supporting that. We have 22 staff right now that's going to be supporting all of those numbers that we just covered. For infraction hearings right now, and I'm just gonna kind of go along the list and feel free to interrupt, ask any questions as they come up. For infraction hearings or civil infraction hearings, we're gonna be scheduling about 80 to 100 of those every single week. Even with how often and how many we're scheduling every single week, we have already maximized every single one of those infraction dockets for the next 2 to 3 months. If you look at court capacity and where we can schedule these, there's no slot available until 3 months down the road. What that means for those civil infractions is we are running up right next to the 120-day rule, which is basically from time of request of a court hearing from the defendant on the infraction. We have 120 days to have that hearing scheduled and heard. We are right up against that with any increase as predicted with infractions being filed with the court. There is absolute concern that there may be potential issues with that 120-day rule for the civil infractions. Moving over to misdemeanors and arraignments, again, looking at capacity of the courts and how frequently we're scheduling with the number of hearings that we have. We have our arraignment hearings currently set out over 6 weeks. The issue with this that I end up looking at is there is a requirement to schedule those arraignment hearings within 14 days of that arraignment being filed with the court. If I was to get an arraignment today and look to the next open slot on the docket, we would be setting it 4 weeks past what we're supposed to. Effectively, we're moving our 90-day speedy trial for out of custody down to 60 days. That will, of course, create more issues within the scheduling, calendaring. It's just a short amount of time to schedule a lot of proceedings. In order to mitigate this, what we've done is we've actually increased the number of dockets that we have. But unfortunately, it's at an unsustainable pace and based off of our staffing level to be able to support it. What we've done is increased all dockets. If we look back at 2019, 2018, we've increased the number of calendars heard every week by over 20%. So we've added quite a few dockets to our weekly calendars in order to meet the need of the caseloads coming into the court. Right now, we're trying to balance how we can make that a sustainable effort to meet the caseloads when we don't have enough clerks to go into the courtroom to manage those dockets. For our court and the courtroom and how that works, we have one court clerk inside the courtroom. We don't have a stenographer, a judicial assistant, and a court clerk in there managing those dockets. It's one person. It's one person that's doing all the Zoom, YouTube, live stream, in-person, virtual conferences when we have that hybrid approach. The private conferences or breakout rooms that we have going on, our audio-video system, our records management, case management system, the list goes on and on. We have one person in there that's maintaining all of these records. So right now we're trying to balance what that looks like. Again, with that capacity issue, that's where we start having some issues or seeing some issues as far as managing those calendars. A lot of our, actually all of our management team right now, non-union management, are doing union level work. We have our operations officer, even our financial officer, they're having to clerk. They're having to go into the courtroom. We have staff right now that are missing their regular scheduled breaks and lunches because dockets are running late because they're over capacity. So what's sustaining those efforts, what's maintaining those efforts just right now is our management positions being pulled out of those management roles and having to do the union work in order to keep our dockets moving right now. And that's kind of what's keeping all those going. Any questions about the courtroom side of things? There's a lot. Real quick.
You're giving us a lot.
Are you waiting for a comp, what's that, comp study? We're trying to make some adjustments. Yeah, comp in class. Is that something that would help if we got that done? Is that what you're saying?
I know the county and Maria's office has been really great about moving that forward and looking at what that looks like, and I've been talking with Maria about.
But it's not
the
there yet.
stages. Right, and I think in kind of some of our conversations that we've had previously as far as the class specifications, I know there's the class comp piece, which is one, but the other piece that we're trying to address is the actual specifications and how they exist now. Because we go back and we look at these, and this is a process that we started a couple years ago. The specifications within the court haven't been touched. They haven't been changed in 18, 20, 25 years. The courts have changed drastically in that amount of time, just in the last 4 years, let alone the last 20 years. So there's a lot of updates that have to come with those specifications, and that's my primary focus right now, is ensuring that the roles, the responsibilities, the tasks and duties that need to be done in order to meet the mandated services of the courts, we're getting those right, and that we're updating those classifications, specifications to reflect that. So that's ongoing work that we're doing right now, and then I'm going to be sharing those with Maria and working through the HR side of the process.
So how is class and comp though gonna help you deal with 10% increase in filings every year? I don't see the connection.
Well, I think as far as the assistance with that, one of it will be hiring. We've had issues with our court assistant 2 positions, for example, some
So
of
you
our
have some
higher level
vacant
positions. We don't have vacant, we're going to have vacant positions, yes. We've been really good about being able to hire into those positions, but that has been harder to do based off of the compensation that's provided. Usually we can go and we can see other courts that are nearby, Mason County. We ended up getting some clerks from Mason County that have come over to us. But there hasn't been as much appeal due to the amount that we can offer when they end up coming over. So I think that's one piece. I think the other is the retention piece. What we've seen very recently is we've had a few of our staff that have gone to other local courts for positions that are equal to, if not slightly lower specification, that pay much more than we do. So
But if they were paid more and retained, there's still, you're talking about a volume of
Yes.
calendars. I mean, you need like human being. You need more courtrooms, more judges, more lawyers, more staff to manage calendars that are completely, you're chopping off from what you described, 33% of the speedy trial time just to get people into an arraignment.
Absolutely.
So the class and common is not gonna solve that problem.
It won't. It's just one piece of it. Yeah, it's an excellent point. And even in conversations that we've had with commissioners in our earlier meetings, I think it was asked of me, what do you need? And I very bluntly said 11. I have identified 11 FTEs that I need to maintain services right now. Now, 6 of those were probation, but that's 5 additional staff just right now to maintain what current caseloads are. That's without having to bring in our management level staff to do non-union represented work so they can do the job that they're there to do. That's kind of where we're at as far as the caseload. So absolutely, I appreciate that comment.
You know, I wonder if that isn't just a case of almost like the parks. I use Lacey as an example. We've got 30-some employees, we've got 6. We just don't have a revenue stream that deals with all this stuff.
I know, between the, I mean, and again, the 10%, I mean, let's just use it as a ballpark, because I'm using 10% because you said 27,000 to 30 to 33, that's 3,000, that's basically 10% per year. So let's just say all the associated expenses are rising 10% a year. I mean, that's, to handle 10% more work, you probably need 10% more of what you're spending to handle that work. And, you know, district court's just one little world, but that seems pretty consistent to me, like what's going on across the county on all sorts of things. And in our building, we had an update on our building status this morning, and all of our buildings probably need 10% more money going into building reserve so that we can manage these roofs.
I think it
HVACs
probably
and
needs
stuff.
more than that,
Well,
really, to do
it
it
does
right.
now, but it's what we needed like in the past.
After they're fixed, they need that.
Had we had 10% each year more than what we had, we would have been able to keep up with basic county government, you know.
But all that stuff was supposed to be addressed in the Ruckle House study, but it never
Keep
got.
talking about that.
But we go to the, anyway, it's just frustrating because, the 5077, which is talking about the property tax cap, making it at least be able to be flexed to 3% if inflation warranted it, and then, this board unanimously supported that bill. I happened to be available that day, so I was sent to testify on it. I'm being beat up on Facebook about that I'm trying to raise everyone's taxes personally for
Yeah.
something that we can all see is just
That ties at it again.
common sense.
Well, you bring up the 10% too, and that 10% also doesn't bring in the deficit that's currently being faced. We're already having those issues, so when you continue to raise those, it kind of exacerbates any of those issues that have previously existed.
Yeah, I know, it's really difficult.
Well, and I guess along those lines too is transitioning from the courtroom and what those issues and barriers presented are to the customer service side of things that the court's ending up providing. We've had to close our civil department counter. So where we used to have public service at that counter, that's been closed. We've had to temporarily absorb that into our court services department. Though the court services department is not open the number of hours that we used to have them. We used to be open 8 hours a day to the public. That's phone service, live chat, email, front counter service. That has remained at about 6.5 hours every single day that we're providing service, so we've reduced that by 1.5 hours. So there are limitations there. We've attempted to increase that back to 8 hours a day because we recognize that there is a need for service. I mean, we're talking well over 100,000 interactions that we're having. Within that time period, we need to find a way to provide a better service. Each time that we think we find a way, okay, we can move forward, open it up for an extra 30 minutes, an extra hour. We have to put staff away, stick them into the courtroom, stick them into some other job duty so that we can support the mandated functions of the court. The other conversation that we've been recently having as far as temporary resolution is potentially closing down customer service for an afternoon, 2 days a week. So whether that's the front counter, whether it's the phones, we'd have to absolutely cut those off in order to ensure that we're providing adequate training, support to staff, covering the courtrooms, ensuring that we have the accurate records and support for the judicial officers that we need to. So that's kind of where we're at with the customer service side of things as well. All of these have a direct impact on one another, and they all come back to those mandated services and what we need to provide. I'm trying to be creative in how we're doing that within the resources that we have.
Good talk.
Well, it's all true.
Well, I just want to make sure that, and that's why I share my appreciation for having these. I mean, we don't really get this opportunity to really get into detail about what those operations look like on a day-to-day and what we're managing internally. I know that we come in and we can talk a lot about substance monitoring program, what's happening from the bench, the different things that are happening in those realms, but I think it's also important just to be able to come in and be real about what it is that we're seeing on a day-to-day, what we're managing, and what we're kind of pushing through in order to provide the service to our communities. So that's kind of where we're at. And some of the things that we're trying to find time to address is in the near future, there's going to be a new case management system that the state's going to be pushing out to all the courts of limited jurisdiction. So that's going to be coming in a couple short years. And I say very, very short year because we need to start preparing for that. It's going to be quite the onboarding process for the case management system. We have to look at our current records management system, the feasibility of us maintaining that in the future, whether there needs to be any changes, adjustments, potentially new records management systems that meet the needs. Balance that with this new case management system that's going to completely change the way that we do business. So that is right around the corner, and we have to start preparing for that as well.
That's kind of overdue, though.
Oh, it's absolutely overdue.
It's going to be a
JIS
welcome
started
change
in
for the,
1980, I believe.
yeah.
So it's absolutely different. But the thing is, we've been so creative and progressive and forward-thinking with how we do court, as far as our records management, having public access to the case files, the way that the documents move through the courtroom without having to push paper. Thing is, the new case management system coming on is still, it's not going to be able to have those efficiencies that we've built into our process. If we were to get rid of everything, go just to the case management system, it's going to step us back. We cannot keep up with the caseloads of the court. So we have to make sure that our records management system, our processes are in alignment before the system comes on board so that we can keep things rolling forward without having any delays, any stoppages. I think that's my biggest fear is any potential delay in a single docket can have impacts all the way down the road. If we have a power failure that lasts 2 hours and we have to reset hearings, I mean, we ended up going over the number of proceedings and how far those are scheduled out. We have to reschedule proceedings due to any sort of failure of equipment or anything. It will have impacts months and months and months down the road.
I know this, but I'm kind of blanking out. Your interaction with the clerk's office, are they Superior Court oriented only?
Yes,
So you manage your own clerk functions internally?
yes, we do.
Okay. Because I worked with the clerk somewhat on the tail end of the Superior Court case management rollout. But this will be different, involving different staff in your team.
It will, yep. AOC will be working with district court only and implementing this, and we will cover all functions, both side. Separate parties coming in.
You say clerk, you mean the county clerk?
Yeah.
We have a
Linda
county,
Enwell.
we have,
Yep,
we haven't, she's been involved, or she, right?
yep.
We've had all these introductions from all these elected officials, and I've never even seen or heard that office mentioned once. Is it just kind of like not talked about?
Oh, no, we offered the clerk the same meet and greet opportunities as we did to all of the other, elected officials in the courts.
So the person exists.
And she declined to have a meeting with you. And she didn't want to have the open meeting like we set up for everybody else, but I thought that she'd be meeting with you individually. Oh, yeah, Linda Enlow.
Yeah. I really thought that the beginning introductions like we did was a great way to start things off. And, I don't know, that's kind of disappointing to hear that.
Yeah, my understanding had been that she chose to meet with you individually, and if she
Absolutely
has
not.
not done so, then we need to set something up.
Yeah, I'd really like to do the exact same thing that we did with everyone else for her to start with, because
Yeah,
having the context of the other commissioners to be able to weigh in is extremely helpful.
Thank you for that feedback, but it was an invitation to the other elected officials.
We had a rocky budget session with the clerk. and her
Get over
staff,
it and
so
move forward.
That's what I would say, but maybe I'm just speculating.
So I did have a question, Frankie. Is the system that AOC is gonna implement for, your court the same as the one they use for Superior Court, or will it be a different system?
It's the same platform. It is the Odyssey
The
platform.
Odyssey system?
They're calling it Enterprise Justice, but it's the
Okay.
Odyssey
Great.
platform. It'll be the newer version.
So our IT people be sure to loop them in, and they'll
Absolutely.
be able to assist and.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Enterprise Justice.
We'll have Enterprise Justice as well as Enterprise Supervision, which is for managing probation, and there will also be an e-file insert module included within the system also.
So they're gonna give you, the state's giving you a system that helps manage probation? Interesting.
It took us many, many years to work through this. I've been on the court user work group and the project steering committee for a statewide system, and we're very fortunate to have the support to push those out to the state.
Okay. Is that it?
I hope so for today.
Okay, good. Any other
Until the
questions
next one.
for Frankie? Any other topic related to district court we want to cover? No? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Can we take 5?
yeah. Let's do that. We're a little ahead of schedule now, so.
Okay.
Treasurer, can we get 5 minutes?
Oh, sure.
You get your full 40. Okay, we'll pause until 2:20. at 2:21, and we are back after a very brief recess. It's February 13, 2023. We're in the middle of a work session with various elected officials, departments, and third up this afternoon is the treasurer. We have Treasurer Gadman here, and we have about 40 minutes to go through, if we needed, to go through updates from his department.
Okay, well, I think this is not going to be 40 minutes, but I'm available if we need it. I know the auditor started with legislation. I mean, the only real piece of legislation that the treasurers are tracking right now, 2 years ago, the legislature passed a law, and I don't remember what the core goal was, but what they inadvertently did was wiped out some consumer protection language. So under the old law, anybody that was going to go through county records to find property that you may own. So in where treasurers are concerned is when we foreclose on a property and we put it out for auction and it sells for more than the back taxes that are owed, that surplus money is available to the former property owner to claim as their own. They have up to 3 years to do that. Under the old law, language in the law, anybody that would help try to find that unclaimed property was limited to charging a 5% finder's fee. What happened is the legislature inadvertently removed that language from law, and so it basically removed those limits. And why that's important is people, so everything that government possesses or has in their possession that belongs to somebody else, it's all public record, right? But going through all the myriad agencies and things that you need to go through that might have something that you have a right to takes time. And what these companies would do is they'll ask for, okay, we want to know all of the surplus funds that you've received this year. Public record, so we'll send it to them. And then they will contact that former property owner and say, hey, did you know there's $40,000 sitting at Thurston County that you're entitled to? We will help you get that for a modest fee of, and so that invites a lot of predators into the market. And since this law changed, we've actually seen that beginning to happen. And so HB 1637 that is on track for passage this year is going to restore that language back in there, limiting that 5%. So we're pretty excited about that. Other than that, the big thing is I sent you all a Valentine last weekend. I hope you've gotten it by now. I just want to let you all know I was thinking about you.
Thank you.
That's obviously increased some phone and foot traffic for us and the assessor. I was talking to Sharon out front, and she said the assessor had quite an increase in foot traffic yesterday too, which is expected. We are in the process right now. We issued an RFP for banking services in November, and part of that was also merchant services, so we're in the middle of the interview process. We heard from 5 banks responded to our RFP. We decided to interview 3 of them, completed that interview process today, and we are currently banking with KeyBank. We are not dissatisfied with KeyBank at this point, but I think it's important for public transparency to go through this process once in a while just to make sure that the vendor that we have is the best fit for our needs. Merchant services, those interviews will be at the end of the week. That one has a little bit more likely chance of us changing vendors from point and pay, but we'll see. One of the finalists, I heard something today that was a little bit troubling about them, and it's unfortunate because their response actually looked pretty promising. So anyway, we'll see how that comes out. I will keep you posted. We'll be meeting next week, my staff and I that have been doing these interviews and doing our final evaluations deciding if we can make a final decision or if we need to do a second round of interviews.
There's some scary looking folks in the commissioner's office the other day, and turns out they were looking for Nicole. They were bankers looking for Nicole.
Oh.
Scary. I was like, who are these guys? They look like government long trench coats, and I was like, turned out they were bankers. That made sense.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, Commissioner Edwards.
How are we doing on investment income?
Very well.
Yeah, I mean, we must be head and shoulders above where we've been some years back.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch our investment income, it kind of follows what the Fed funds rate is doing. You know, when it's up, our investment income is up. When it goes down, the investment income goes down. You know, our trend in the pool has been that it's continuing to grow. So, it's not a proportionate reduction or increase.
What kind of percentage is that giving us as far as like the money that we have coming in? Maybe a couple of years ago, we got 2%. I don't know what we got for sure, but, and now maybe are we getting a 6% return? And what's the dollar amount that affects our ability to have resources to solve problems? I'm looking specifically for $2 million.
So, in 2021, we were earning on a month basis anywhere between 0.5% and 0.6%, which at that point, the Fed funds rate was 0, right? This year, we're earning between 2.75% and 3%, with the Fed funds rate at 5 to 5.25. And so the LGIP, which is administered by the state treasurer, is earning over 4% right now. And the difference there is they are in a constant churn of what they own. They're usually looking at 6 months or less. So the percentage that's earned by that pool changes much faster. It changes up much faster when the rates are going up, and it changes down much faster when the rates are going down. For instance, in 2021, while our pool was earning 0.5 to 0.6, they were earning 0.08 to 0.1. And so one of the benefits we have with having somebody that's as talented as Nicole Mugi on staff, she's very, very good at setting our duration within our pool so that we get protected as things start. What you're going to see is as things start to fall, which by all accounts is going to happen later this year, our rate is going to stay much steadier than the LGIP will.
Nicole's good.
She is very good.
Very impressive county employee.
What's that?
Very impressive county employee in my estimation.
Oh, in more than one dimension, yes.
So is that gonna help us out about 3% on ending fund balance?
We've already factored in.
Have you already factored that in?
Yep.
See, that's another, you've got a very
God,
talented
your budget seems too
prognosticator
good.
over here.
They're one step
You
ahead of
went over
us.
on anybody when Robin's sitting there.
All right.
So that is about all of the highlights that are coming out of the treasurer's office right now. We're fully staffed, which I'm thankful for.
You got 30 more minutes.
Certain time it kicks it.
We get a break.
You don't interact with it, it thinks it's,
Talking to,
Oh,
yeah, you got 30 more minutes, keep going.
Like I said, there just isn't a lot of huge things going on. We've got, the assessor and I have looked at a couple of different software vendors for the eventual replacement of our assessment and collection software. There's another vendor that, Tyler, that is trying, or not Tyler, Harris, that is trying to set up a time when we could look at them. I mean, these are just very informal, no response, but we do anticipate some point approaching all of you to issue an RFP and ask you all for a budget to replace our current software, which was, well, we purchased it in 1997. It was originally written in COBOL in 1978, so it's time.
My goodness.
And other than that, like I said, I just don't, things are copacetic, and I'm very grateful to have the support of the commissioners, because I think us having a good relationship is extremely important.
Okay, very good. If there's no other questions for the treasurer, we are at the end of the agenda, and so we're adjourned.
We had commissioner items earlier that we skipped over.
Good.
Can we, is it too late to create that opportunity? I just had one, thought and request. Opportunity zones, could we set some time up to have either Michael Cade and or Jenica come in and talk to us about
Absolutely.
opportunity zones, especially in light of the Grand Mountain UGA?
Yeah,
Or has that something you guys have talked about before?
yeah, but we can bring it back
Not-
again.
It's been a while, and not much depth, so.
Okay.
Makes sense.